Welcome to Pesto Comics Audio Edition. This is the entry for April 30th, 2025. Con Journal, Toronto Indie Author Conference, a busy Saturday, and a crisis of direction on Sunday. Welcome back. It's the beginning of convention season. Normally, I would feel some FOMO as I'm watching all the fun being had at the Calgary Comic Expo, but I was much too busy to notice all that with the Toronto Indie Authors Conference, a concert, and a couple of footy games to watch, both in TV and in person. My hands are full this weekend. It truly does feel like everything's coalescing at once. I received prints for both Naked Kaiju Woman and From Parts Unknown #2. The campaign for From Parts Unknown #3 ended on Friday with another funding success, and preparations for From Parts Unknown #4 are ongoing. More on that in the next section. I also owe comic strip pages to a couple of artists waiting to get started on projects I haven't announced yet. And I'm still working on locking down an editor for a couple more projects that I'll be announcing in the coming weeks. Needless to say, I've been busy. For that reason, I really enjoyed the weekend and some time to recharge from all of it, even if it was an active recharge. Every time I was sitting on public transit or walking to my next destination, I could hear the voice in the back of my head saying that this was time that I could have spent writing, brainstorming, or packing comics. I had to quiet that down, as I know I'll get through all of it soon enough. As far as tabling goes, TCAF is on the horizon, which is well over a month away. I have lots of time to make sure that I can get organized and caught up with everything that I have planned. The weekend was wild, and the days after gave me some time to reflect on advice I was given. At one point, I was thrown into total crisis mode, rethinking everything I've been doing all along. I think I've made sense of it now, but I'll tell you how I got there today. But before we do that, project update. The end of From Parts Unknown in Prelaunch. The final issue of From Parts Unknown, issue 4, will be launching on May 28th. With issue 2, and even more so with issue 3, I didn't push as hard as I could have. If you read this newsletter regularly, it was here every week, but I held back on ads and general promo like guesting on podcasts. With this being the final issue of the series, I'm making every effort to be as loud and as annoying as possible. My hope is to send From Parts Unknown out with a roar. A key metric in making sure that happens is getting the pre-launch follower count up. If you haven't followed yet, please give it a follow so we can share this absolutely action-packed finale far and wide. Everything that we've been setting up in the first 3 issues gets paid off in this double-sized finale. A couple of body slams, gore, vampires, and pro wrestling. I hope you decide to check it out. With that, let's talk about the wild weekend. Main story, my place in the pack. This is just the second year of the Toronto Indie Author Conference, and I thought things wouldn't have changed too much from what I experienced the first time around. I knew the setting would be entirely different. It's now in the much more appropriate Toronto Reference Library versus the YMCA just a couple blocks south of it. No longer having the scent of chlorine and the sounds of splashes from the nearby pool was a welcome change. Instead, walking through the large lobby in between the stacks of books on the way to Beaton Hall at the back of the library felt much more appropriate. Rather than having a presentation-style room with chairs facing front, there were a number of tables, each labeled with a different genre. The first task of the day was to find which genre you fit in and sit amongst your genre compatriots. It was a great way to force some networking that always seems to be a bit of a tricky balance at these conferences. This is a great way to make friends right off the bat without putting anyone on the spot. My unique challenge was this was not a comic book conference. This was a conference of authors. There is no designated table for people like me who, at least so far, have only specialized in comics, with the exception of short stories and Big Smoke Pulp. Based on that, I went to the closest possible genre table I could find, which was sci-fi and fantasy. While there, I immediately recognized a couple of people I had seen the year before, and things went off pretty swimmingly. Whereas last year, I was just getting started with Crazy Latte Thing Called Love releasing that month, and only Unlimited Udo and Stay Cool before it. I felt much more confident saying that I was a comic book writer with a decent-sized following. Thanks to all of you for that. That said, when we're talking about fiction writing, I'm still relatively new to the game. I've written many short stories, and even had a couple of them published here or there. I shared even more in the back of Big Smoke Pulp, yet I did not feel like I was part of the group quite yet. My mission this year was to gather as much information as I could so that I could begin the second phase of my writing career while still keeping the comics going strong now that I'm comfortable in that world. I had a lot to learn from the people there, not just from the speakers, but my fellow indie writers. The seminars I attended weren't always relevant to what I was aiming to do, as it was a very romance and romantasy heavy guest list. Even the genre tables at the start of the day were half romance and romance subgenres, leaving the rest of the tables for every other genre. And this was just the beginning of my day. A very busy Saturday. Completely unintentionally, I overbooked my dance card for Saturday. I'm a TFC member, so I have tickets to every match at BMO Field. Although back at the library, it was abnormally warm from both body heat and the lack of ventilation, the outdoor stadium was terribly cold, even though it was twice as warm the day prior and after. I suffered through it just to witness Toronto FC lose yet another game in disappointing fashion. This time succumbing to a penalty kick and losing 1-0 to NYCFC after being unable to make anything of consequence happen in the opponent's end after 90 frigid minutes. On a beautiful sunny day where I had nothing else going on, this outcome would be tolerable. Instead, it felt like an extra gut punch given I was missing out on both the conference and staying indoors. A great palate cleanser was watching the Copa del Rey at the nearby Brazen Head. We were somehow able to get a decent table as we watched Barcelona gain the lead, only to lose it within minutes, and then come back in exhilarating fashion. It was bittersweet given that my team, Inter Milan, will be facing this very powerful-looking side today on Wednesday in the Champions League, something I was constantly reminded about by my friend and hardcore Barca fan who joined me for these midday games. From there, I headed over to the Rogers Center for the second night of a 2-night concert with Metallica. It was a great show as the band hasn't lost a step, even if there's a lot more breaks than there was in the past. Understandably so. Compared to the 2-minute tracks you'll find on Spotify from new artists that are geared towards being the background to your favorite TikTok dances, these 10-minute anthems feel like being taken on a journey in the most enjoyable, high adrenaline way. The crowd around me showed its age as we remained in our seats for the majority of the concert. The crowd around the stage was absolutely wild, though. It was an interesting way to feel the atmosphere without actually having to participate in it. Given the long day I had, I was not entirely against it. It was a great Saturday, but I knew I was in for it as the morning was quickly approaching as I took the train home. King of the introverts. There's something cliche about feeling like you never really fit in. I feel like anyone who's creative and actually pursues creative exercise has a version of this story. In most scenarios, the audacity to have something to share with the world, to feel like you're important enough that your voice should be heard above the crowd, is something that isn't immediately accepted, if not revolted against entirely, especially if you haven't made a name for yourself. Or that could all be in your head. That's the feeling I've fought for a long time. When I was younger, I was very much a wallflower. At some point, something snapped. I'm not sure what happened. I can't pinpoint it. I just know that I stopped worrying about making a fool of myself if I dared to open my mouth. And now, if you've ever been around me for some amount of time, you know I'm usually the one filling every possible silence. It's helped me in my career. Believe it or not, IT folks are very introverted. And so are writers. They're not the first ones to put their hand up or speak to a crowd in a lot of cases. That made it easy for me to stand out, as I was always the first one to volunteer, the first one to jump into new tasks, the first one to put my face out there and meet new people. Even though I was running on fumes Sunday, I found myself talking to anyone that was brave enough to sit next to me. Anytime a question was posed by a presenter, I was sure to raise my hand and provide my input. A side note, I loathe the people who feel the need to comment during a presentation unprompted. It's not a good look and can derail a presenter's train of thought. Don't do this. The seminars are great, but the real value in the Toronto Indie Author Conference is the roundtables. It's also what caused me to have a crisis between sessions, a crisis of direction. In seminars, you get a lot of information, and if you're lucky, or a quick draw like me, you might get to ask a question. The roundtables are a lot more intimate. All the speakers are assigned a table and a topic. You get 20 minutes with each speaker and a small handful of other writers to ask any questions that you didn't get to ask in front of the group at their seminar. Being the loud, obnoxious one in the room, I took full advantage of this, asking as many questions as I possibly could. And to be clear, I didn't steamroll each session. I made sure everyone got a chance to speak. I was just usually the first one after a couple of moments of silence to actually get things rolling. By some dumb luck, I was able to sit with Tao Wang, the uber-successful indie author who spawned this conference, with just one other writer at the table who said she was more than happy to just take notes. It became a private 20-minute conversation with Tao. Though he's very much accessible online, it was nice to get some face-to-face with him to ask about strategies and how to make a fruitful career. His advice immediately threw me into a crisis. It started with a simple question. What genre do I write in? I told him I'm a bit of a genre hopper. For whatever reason, I didn't add that I write comics. The conversation quickly became about picking a lane, building up your name as a specific type of writer to build your audience. Only after you're firmly established should you even consider genre hopping, if at all. I always found myself to enjoy being able to write almost any genre, hopping from sci-fi to mystery to noir to horror to comedy. That said, I've seen the ebb and flows of not sticking to a specific genre. With this weighing on me, I walked over to the author branding table with Mark Leslie Lefebvre. He then proceeded to give me the exact opposite advice. It was to follow my heart, work in whatever genres get me to the keyboard. Yes, it may not make me rich monetarily, but it would enrich my soul. With conflicting information from two authors that I truly admire, I left the conference as motivated and confused as ever, reflecting on all of it. After having a couple days to reflect since Sunday, I think I have a new strategy that doesn't upend all the work I've put in already. The answer is follow both Tao Wang's and Mark Leslie Lefebvre's advice. When it comes to comics, I'm taking Mark's advice. I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing. I'll genre hop with abandon. I'll continue writing what I enjoy and finding talented artists to make it come to life. I'll keep using Kickstarter to get these projects together. You'll still find me at your local cons with all kinds of books that might catch your attention. For comics, I have plenty of plans for the near future, and I can tell you they're all over the place genre-wise, as per usual. If you like one or two of my stories, you'll probably like the rest. I'm pretty confident in my voice, especially when it comes to comics, and I think that it shines through regardless of the genre I'm writing in. When it comes to my new venture in writing novels and novellas, I can see the value in what Tao recommended. Pick a lane. I already announced something in the paid newsletter, which was more sci-fi, but I don't think that project fits the new direction I'm taking. That doesn't mean the story will go to waste, but it can use a lot more time in the oven anyway. If you look at my bookshelf at home, it's very much a mix between sci-fi and mystery thrillers. Most of the ideas I have for novels have fallen in the mystery side, so it makes sense to focus my energies there. Once I figured out the indie author game a bit, I'll launch my sci-fi stories under a pen name. It won't be a secret, but more for promotional and algorithm purposes. All this to say, I'll have more to announce about my novels and novellas very soon. I'll share right now that I'm working on a time travel romance novel for the Heartstrings and Hardbacks open call this July. It'll be a total one-off, though I have sequel ideas, and it'll fall entirely outside of the strategy. Beyond this project, I'll be putting all my non-comic or newsletter writing energy into the mystery thriller space. When I find myself at the Toronto Indie Author Conference next April 16th through 17th, 2026, I know what table I'll be sitting at. Until next time. Coming up on the Substack, Saturday, May 3rd, Elsewhere in the Universe, Destructing the Antihero. Are bad guys really bad guys? And on Wednesday, May 7th, a free post, Postmortem, from Parts Unknown #2, an in-depth look at the 7th Pesto Comics campaign. And Saturday, May 10th, a paid post, Working the Socials, where you can find me and strategies to avoid losing your head. And on Wednesday, May 14th, Triple Fulfillment, Naked Kaiju Woman, from Parts Unknown #2 and Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1, fulfilling all of those projects all at once. And quickly, the upcoming appearances. So I'll be at TCAF from June 6th to 8th. Admission is free, so please come on down to Maple Leaf Gardens and come say hi. The following week, I will be in Moncton, New Brunswick for the East Coast Comic Expo. And then, something key to this whole conversation, Word on the Street happening September 27th and 28th. My hope is to actually have some books along with comics at the table to kind of fit in with the crowd there. And still on the wait list for Montreal Comic Con, Ottawa Comic Con, Fan Expo Canada, and the Small Press Expo in September. As far as what I'm just attending, I'm hoping to be at New York Comic Con in October, still waiting for tickets to go on sale there. And the Pesto Comics release calendar, as I mentioned, pre-launch for From Parts Unknown #4 is live. So please go check that out on Kickstarter. Just search From Parts Unknown or click the link in the Substack and you'll be able to find your way there. And shortly after that, for the Heartstrings and the Hardbacks campaign in July, I will have a romance novel available, which I mentioned briefly before. As soon as I announce the title, I'll share pre-launch for that as well, as I'm now allowed to launch multiple pre-launch pages. And then, of course, the big one, the sequel to Naked Kaiju Woman. So I'm planning to have a lot of fun there. To see little changes, I update the progress with the various novellas and novels that I have going on. So keep an eye on the comics release calendar on the Substack. On the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast, we have a new guest in Bruno Caterino. I met him at Thought Bubble. He was a lot of fun. He has a past very similar to mine in the sense that he was a film guy and tried to get into short film, quickly found that that was very expensive and not as lucrative as you'd hope, and found his way to comics, which is also expensive and not as lucrative as one might hope, but seems to be a little better than short film. We have a really cool talk with him. The first episode is really about getting the page together, but we do talk a little bit about our background and that, and then we really get into it in the second episode. So definitely check these out. And as always, they're available on YouTube and otherwise, but I'm going to start linking directly to the Substack as it'll show up straight in your email with the links to YouTube, Spotify, and the various episodes that way. And you just get the page in your inbox. So you could just see the final work that we put together right away. And then at that point, you could listen to the podcast rather than watch if you don't want to be sitting in front of your screen watching the whole time. So you get a little bit of both. So it's a great different way to experience this podcast. If you just want something, while you're on a run or driving and commuting, we have some really cool conversations, and that's a great way to experience it as well. So I highly recommend checking it out that way too. And with that, I want to thank you for listening. It means a ton. I had a pretty fun weekend, but Sunday totally threw me for a loop as I was really pushed for 20 straight minutes on rethinking how I was going about this whole author business. I was going to do it exactly the way I do the comics, which is just write what I feel like writing. I was going to do it in series and just have a sci-fi series and then jump to a thriller series and then jump to a romance series and just do whatever I felt like at any given time. And though some people are successful in that way, some really salient and strong points were made about Amazon kind of sets the tone in terms of author business. And even though I'm planning not to just be on Amazon, my goal is to just do the 90-day window and then go wide with each of these books. It does make a lot of sense that you would try to really establish yourself, not just for readers in a certain genre, but for the algorithm to say, hey, this is a popular author in genre X, and you really should look at this. And then they start pushing you based on the fact that you do well in genre X and you have a lot of readers in genre X. And if you're all over the place, it doesn't know where to push you and it just doesn't bother and buries you entirely. So I totally get that idea. So I think in terms of the books, it makes sense to focus on the series that I have the most ideas for. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to jump genres at some point, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to use these sci-fi ideas and these romance ideas. I'm just probably going to have them under disparate pen names. But as a reader or listener of this newsletter, I'll always share and mention that, hey, under pen name X, I'm releasing this book. So, you won't be entirely in the dark if you're just a fan of everything I'm doing. But for those people that don't exactly know me, I'll have a different path for them to follow and to find my books. One thing I haven't put too much thought into is how all of my social media and even this newsletter plays out in a world where I'm effectively two different people. I'm this person in comics and I'm this person as an author. Do I have two separate mailing lists entirely? Or do I just use this Pesto Comics? Only works when I'm really talking comics. But I've done it in the past with Big Smoke Pulp. That wasn't a comic as well. But do I drive everyone to this main Pesto Comics newsletter? Or do I have an author newsletter that isn't the same mailing list? I don't know. I have to rethink this strategy a little bit on the back end, but I'm not quite there yet. Right now, I'm more focused on which stories do I put all of my energy into? And I think I finally have an answer for that. So it's kind of freeing in a way, because again, I wanted to have all of these plates spinning all at once. And now I have some guidance as to maybe just pick this one and really hone it, focus on it, put all your energy into it. And then hopefully I can build a sustainable author career on one side while continuing the comics one on the other. I'm very happy with how all the comics are going, and that's not going anywhere. I have plans to continue this cadence that I've been doing with these Kickstarters, although I am considering maybe spacing them out just a smidge more, as I already have if you looked at the release calendar. I really want to be able to make sure that pre-launch gets more followers off the bat so that we have a quick day one, because day one kind of sets the tone for the whole campaign. If you don't have a big day one, you never get caught by the Kickstarter algorithm, and then you don't get put in front of people. It just makes it much more of a steep climb. So if that means maybe not having a Kickstarter every 3 weeks, maybe having one every 6 weeks so that I can really get pre-launch collected and going before I ever hit that button. At the end of the day, I want to get these books in front of as many people as possible. And if that means that I'm not launching as frequently, then so be it. I'm really, it's all a bit of an experiment. I feel like with From Parts Unknown, I kind of learned that lesson that you need to leave some space in between, especially with a series, so that people can read the last one before they jump onto the next one. It makes a ton of sense, but it's one of those things. Until I tried it, I didn't really see it that way. Now I kind of see it. So I'll be, of course, re-strategizing and retuning as we go, but I'll always share with you any changes or any rethinks on any of that. And I do appreciate you listening, especially to the end piece as I kind of ramble on and continue to think out loud about how all of this is going to play out. I'll be back on Saturday to talk not about myself and my projects, though full disclosure, it does kind of tie into one of my previous projects. So I'll be back on Saturday to talk about anti-heroes. The whole point is I want to talk about things outside of what's happening with Pesto Comics. I want to talk about all the media I'm enjoying and all that kind of thing. And before I was doing it a bit as a list, now it's more of an essay format, a lot more similar to what you see with this newsletter. But at least for the front end of it, I do a short little discussion about a topic. This week, with the new Dexter series having a launch date just announced and you coming to its finale, I really have anti-heroes on the brain. And then with just what's happened with our Canadian election and media and all that, I feel like the ground is starting to shift a bit in terms of how anti-heroes are perceived. So be sure to check it out on Saturday if you're interested in that kind of discussion. But with that, once again, I'll let you go enjoy your week. I want to thank you again for listening. It means everything. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.